In the middle of the vast ocean, a giant aircraft lands on the deck, creating a majestic and solemn scene. The elite army of the Shenlong Temple stands solemnly to salute Deep, then to report that all tasks have been prepared. The young man with a dusty hairstyle gives orders to his entourage to return to Jiangdu with him. All subordinates respond in unison decisively. The person who just gave the order is the legendary war god Deep Fong. Private jets follow each other, gliding quickly on the sea surface as if to tear the space apart. He opens the news on his phone, then fixes his eyes on the screen with a face full of confusion about a strange image. On the screen appears an image of a beautiful woman standing with a strange man, making his mind troubled. At the international airport of Jiangdu City, the crowd starts to talk about the mysterious guest who just arrived. They cannot help but be amazed at the spectacular scene that the cousin of Vong Sam just set up. 6 of the most advanced B-75 fighter jets of the country are on escort duty, making anyone who witnesses it stunned. Tuvan stands there with otherworldly beauty while Vong Sam keeps boasting about his illustrious background. The beautiful girl shows a cold attitude to the words of her fiancé, then questions the identity of that cousin. Vong Sam proudly boasts that the Lam family in the capital is a famous family with unparalleled power. The old master of the Lam family is respected by the world, called Tai Sun Bak Do in the military system. Although he has retired, he can still make rain and wind through his students who hold major responsibilities. Tuvan just crosses her arms and responds with a short sound instead of a reply. Vong Sam feels uncomfortable in his heart and secretly curses this woman as a mean person. He tells himself to wait until after the engagement ceremony tomorrow to punish her so she knows what manners are. Right then, a gallant young man walks over with 2 bodyguards following behind his back. Vong Sam sees that person and yells excitedly and runs over to shake hands and greet very enthusiastically. He quickly introduces Tuvan as his fiancée so everyone knows. The young man who just arrived secretly compliments the girl in front of him for possessing a rare and beautiful appearance. Vong Sam continues to praise his cousin for being escorted by a mighty fleet of fighter jets. Tuvan's eyes suddenly change with surprise when she sees the face of the man who just appeared. She is shocked and mutters to herself a sentence that no one can hear clearly. Vong Sam looks straight at Deep, then with a mocking and contemptuous tone. He is stunned when he realizes that the person in front of him is the loser who ran away many years ago. Lam Veen sees Deep, then, and his face suddenly becomes pale and sweat starts to bead on his forehead. He understands clearly why there are 6 fighter jets escorting this man. Deep, then, is the legend that makes all war gods in the world have to respect and bow their heads. Vong Sam accuses Deep, then, of abandoning the Tu family, making them fall into a great disaster after her father passed away 5 years ago. Tuvan runs away from the scene in pain because she thinks that this man has truly heartlessly abandoned her. Vong Sam has not had time to say anything else when he sees Lam Veen bowing respectfully to greet Deep Than. The truth in front of his eyes makes him feel so surprised that he cannot believe what he is seeing. Lam Veen performs a grand ceremony, then introduces himself as a person of the Lam family in the capital coming to pay respects to Deep Than. He keeps an expressionless face, then coldly responds that you have recognized the wrong person. Lam Veen feels scared and reminds himself not to let the true identity of Deep Than be revealed. He hurriedly apologizes and admits that he really saw the wrong person during his haste. Vong Sam crosses his arms triumphantly, thinking that a loser like him can never know young Master Lam. A slap lands hard on the face of Vong Sam, making him feel pain while holding his mouth that is bleeding. Lam Veen shouts and orders him to be silent immediately to maintain etiquette. He sits down on the ground and complains why his cousin treated him so cruelly. Lam Veen points his finger straight at his face and declares that from now on the Lam family no longer has any relationship with the Vong family. He does not hesitate to scold him as a damned bastard right in front of everyone. On the luxurious car, a beautiful and stylish girl is reporting to Deep Than about the incidents of the past. Tamuk Kai falls seriously ill, making the Tu family weak while the Vong family rises like a kite in the wind. He quietly looks at the materials in his hand while the girl continues to tell about important events. The cancer of the head of the Tu family is miraculously cured, making everyone amazed. On the contrary, Devan suffers from a strange disease and Vong Sam is the one who found a famous doctor to cure her and then set the engagement from then on. Deep then silently reminisces about the time 5 years ago. To save the life of Demuk Kai, he accepted the conditions of that mysterious old man to leave Jiangdu to learn extraordinary skills. He truly kept his promise to cure the serious illness for the elder of the family. However, that life-saving merit was silently stolen by the Vong family as their own. He mutters in his mouth full of anger about the meanness of the Vong family. The girl beside him continues to report that she has carefully investigated the matter of Devan frequently visiting high-end hotels with Vong Sam. She calls Devan's sister-in-law and explains that they go there to find a high-level physician to treat the disease. Deep then responds in a deep tone that he has never doubted the character of Devan. The girl suddenly calls his name, then asks about the next plan of the two. He asks the driver to drive to the cemetery in Tay Sun because he wants to return to visit the grave of his mother. When he sets foot there, both graves are already empty and the stone stele is smashed to pieces. His face is burning with killing intent along with blood streaks clearly showing, making the girl who goes with him not help but fear and cry, calling his name. Under the grave there is only foul-smelling mud left, as if the culprit intentionally smeared the resting place of his parents. He stands in front of the portrait of his parents, then blames himself for being an unfilial son for letting them suffer such great humiliation. The hand of Deep then clenches until it bleeds, then he roars, asking his subordinates to quickly investigate the person behind the heinous crime. This feud, he swears, will never share the sky with the person who caused it. Suddenly he spits out a mouthful of fresh blood, then falls backward, making the girl rush to support him. She worriedly exclaims that Deep then has been angry to the point of fainting. She quickly uses the phone to contact subordinates to inform the bad news to the Shenlong temple. The parents of the owner have suffered horrific humiliation, making him choke to the point of being comatose. She orders that no matter who the opponent is or how powerful the force is, the Shenlong temple must exterminate the entire family. At the international airport of Jiangdu, it is raining heavily while the super experts of the Shenlong temple gather simultaneously. Li Qin is the commander of the southern military region, seeing this scene and cannot help but worry about a disaster about to happen. He understands clearly that these powerful people just need to gather and are strong enough to destroy a small kingdom. He approaches the man named Hak Long to inquire about the reason for this majestic battle formation. Hak Long is famous for being rough, so he does not explain much but grabs the collar of Li Qin, then questions him angrily. The grave of the parents of Deep then was dug up, causing him to be internally injured and faint, so how can they sit still without coming? All members of the Shenlong temple carry in their hearts extreme hatred and shout the slogan "Killed" to demand justice. Li Qin stammers and asks who dares to do such an inhumane thing, causing others to be angry without regret for their lives. Hak Long throws him to one side, then warns that this is a deep-sea feud of the Longthan temple, so he had better not interfere. Another person also speaks up with a cold, icy tone, asking him never to step in if he does not want to suffer unfortunate consequences. Li Qin hurriedly bows respectfully and promises not to interfere in this matter. He also promises to cooperate fully to help them quickly find the mastermind behind the incident. Looking at the people of the Shenlong temple leaving full of killing intent, Li Qin thinks that this Jiangdu is afraid it is about to collapse completely. At the Royal Entertainment Club in the luxurious VIP room, Tran Thu is immersed in the arms of beauties. He generously announces that all expenses for fun today are paid by him completely. The flatterers surrounding him constantly praise the generosity of Tran Thu to please him. The beauty in his arms curiously asks what happened today that the young master is so excited. He replies that the company just escaped financial trouble thanks to a high-level person who requested to hire grave digging with a generous reward. After digging up those 2 graves, he felt uncomfortable in his stomach, so he defecated in it, then took a photo and sent it to that big boss. He was very satisfied, so he rewarded him with around 100 million. He laughs loudly because this money not only helps the company pay off debts but also has plenty to play and enjoy comfortably. A flatterer praises this money as enough to bring the company to the listing floor in a blink of an eye and swears to cling tightly to the thigh of Tran Thu to earn a living. The people around also praise him as a genius because such difficult things can also be thought of. The beauty in his arms pouts and calls him a male god and asks for a lucky money envelope. He is excited and promises to give lucky money to everyone present in this room. He does not know that the main door has been kicked down by someone from the outside. Deep then appears with an icy face along with two confidants with overwhelming killing intent standing right behind him. 3 people walk into the VIP room, making the atmosphere suddenly become cold. That Tran Thu raises his voice to shout and ask who these people are that dare to blatantly rush in here. Deep then does not say a word but nonchalantly sits down on the chair. Hak Long pulls out a sharp knife then slams it down on the table, creating a jarring sound. He speaks up with a cold tone, demanding him to confess the name of the mastermind behind the funding within 1 minute. Tran Thu aggressively stands up, pointing his finger to scold, and assumes that he is just using a knife to threaten him. Immediately the tip of the knife stabs straight into his thigh, making this person scream shrilly because of the pain. The people around are scared and scream, then run away in panic because of fear of being implicated. Hak Long presses the knife deeper, making him painful to the point of trembling. Deep then coldly repeats the question, and the other person has to confess that Vong Sam is the person behind everything. He is scared and begs for mercy because he does not want to die yet. He asks again about the ashes of his parents, where they are. He stammers and confesses that Vong Sam ordered people to take the ashes to hide. Hak Long pulls the knife out of the thigh of the bastard, then turns to ask Deep then whether he can let him live for 5 more seconds. He indifferently agrees, making Tran Thu feel death is approaching and constantly crying and begging. At the Vong family villa, the party is taking place very luxuriously with many guests. A person speaks up, requesting everyone to keep order to welcome the most important character today. Guests wonder who the person whom Vong boss values like that is after all. He answers flatly that it is the head of the family Lam Non Chuang of the Lam family in the capital. The whispers arise because everyone knows that the Lam Group is the #1 enterprise in Longnan country. Everyone is even more surprised when remembering the old master of the Lam family, who is known as Tai Sun Bak Do in the army. People conclude that the two families Vong and Lam have a relationship that is not ordinary, so they sent Lam Non Chuang to attend an engagement ceremony. The Vong family organizes a big party like that to show off their power and affirm a firm position in the world. A luxurious car enters the lobby and Vong boss hurriedly goes out to greet very enthusiastically. He calls Lam Non Chuang brother and asks about the long and hard trip. Lam Non Chuang just hums perfunctorily, then goes straight into the hall with his son Lam Veen. Suddenly a group of people rushes in, making the crowd stir, and the male lead calls the name of Vong Sam directly and majestically. He orders him to crawl here and kneel down to admit his guilt. Vong Sam recognizes Deep then, so he shouts loudly for his subordinates to rush up to kill him. He offers a hot reward of 5 million for anyone who can knock him down. The bodyguards do not know life and death rush up to curse him for daring to come to disturb the party. However, these people are quickly beaten by the people of the Shen Long Temple and collapse on the ground. Vong Sam is scared when seeing his subordinates defeated completely, but still tries to keep his voice. He points his finger toward the Lam family to threaten him and assumes that touching the Vong family is touching the Lam family. Deep then smirks, then looks toward the father and son of the Lam family. Immediately Lam Non Chuang and his son approach to respectfully bow to greet the adult. Vong Sam stands stunned on the spot and is completely confused, not understanding what is happening. The head of the Vong family is also shocked and wonders why Deep then knows the Lam family. He says flatly that we meet again. Lam Veen hurriedly responds and says yes sir. Lam Non Chuang also introduces himself and says that he was sent by his father to come here to listen to his orders. He walks inside majestically, then leaves a message for Lam Non Chuang to send greetings to the old master when returning. He orders Hak Long to clean up this place. Vong Sam has not realized it yet and turns to question his cousin that this is definitely a mistake. He calls his father to look carefully again because he thinks that the brat in front of him is just a useless piece of trash. Hak Long immediately rushes up holding a baton to beat him until his mouth bleeds, then rolls on the ground. Vong Tung Nguyen worries and runs over to hug his son, then shouts to ask Lam Non Chuang about their actions. He declares not to let Deep then leave here safely no matter who he is. He threatens him not to interfere in this matter if he does not want to cut off the relationship. Lam Veen directly shouts back that he does not have the qualifications to talk to his father like that. Lam Non Chuang also coldly informs him that the Lam family will manage this matter strictly to the end. Vong Tung Nguyen yells the name of Lam Non Chuang loudly, then reminds him not to forget that he currently holds power over the Lam group and should not consider himself the representative of the whole family. He also threatens that just one call will ensure everything he does today reaches the ears of old Master Lam. While speaking, he pulls out his phone while he provocatively says to go ahead and do it. With a wicked face, he warns him not to blame him for being unrighteous. Does he think that at the Lam family he no longer has anyone to back him up? Deep then at this moment sits down on the chair pulled out by Hak Long with an easy manner. On the other side of the phone, Vong Tung Nguyen reports to his second uncle that he is acting on his father's orders, but the nephew of Lam Non Chuang is colluding with outsiders to cause trouble. The old uncle screams and demands Non Chuang to apologize to his brother immediately. He responds that he is only following the orders of his father. The other end of the line tells him to wait, then suddenly yells into the phone that the bastard Vong Tung Nguyen wants to die, then go ahead but do not drag him along. He also adds that the person he offended is someone that even the Lam family does not dare to touch. With his arms crossed in front of his chest, Deep then sits majestically in front of him, then majestically questions him if he has finished calling. Vong Tung Nguyen looks at the phone with a dark face because he did not expect that the person who was despised by all of Gyeongdu 5 years ago has now become a figure that the Lam family of the capital does not dare to provoke. He quickly bows his head to express the cancellation of the engagement between his son and Devan to hope that he will raise his hand high and strike lightly. Vong Sam lies on the ground crying, full of self-pity, but cannot do anything. The old man advises his son not to worry because the green forest is still there, so one day he will reclaim this debt. He looks at him with hateful eyes and is determined that one day he will skin him and cut him into 100 pieces. The eyes of Deep then are still as sharp as a knife, then he smirks and asks why he must spare the lives of his father and son. Vong Tung Nguyen cannot stand it anymore and yells to blame him for chasing and killing him just because of an engagement. He coldly orders him to bring the ashes of his parents here, then he will talk further. Hak Long replaces his master to expose the crimes when accusing Vong Sam of digging up the graves of the parents of Deep and then defecating in them. He declares that even if the heavenly king arrives, he cannot save him because he will definitely dismember him to offer to the souls of his parents. Vong Tung Nguyen angrily gives his son a slap, then questions why he committed this heartless act. He does not care about etiquette but kneels down to beg Deep then to spare his son a chance to live. He promises to change his child and wishes to offer all his property for him to handle as he pleases. He coldly asks again if he thinks that he needs money. Vong Tung Nguyen hurriedly waves his hand to deny, then grabs the collar of his son to lift him up to ask for the hiding place of the ashes. Vong Sam only knows how to cry while his father holds something to trade conditions. He speaks sternly and asks him what status he has to negotiate conditions with him. After giving the paper to Hak Long, he says this thing relates to the death of his parents. The male lead stands up with unmatched power, making the chair he just sat on break, then orders him to speak fast. He tries to suppress his fear and tells him to agree to his conditions first. Deep then coldly agrees that he will not kill anyone else. He closes his eyes and recounts that 5 years ago a strange old man came to trade and asserted that in less than a month the Deep family would be bankrupt. He has a guess in his mind but still asks what that old man looked like. Vong Tung Nguyen describes that he had a large stature and a handsome white hair, and especially the red bead necklace on his hand. Deep then clenches his hands into fists and confirms that it is definitely his enemy because that old man has never been lenient to anyone. His face is extremely gloomy, wondering why it has to be him out of all the people in the world. He angrily erupts his power, then roars that he has been tricked into being a puppet for the past 5 years. Vong Tung Nguyen is confused and asks if the adult knows that old man. He answers coldly that it does not relate to him and demands that he tells the whole story. He does not dare to refuse, then tells the old story of the past. At that time the grandfather of the Deep family was the imperial physician of the court, while his father was the national medical saint with extremely miraculous acupuncture techniques. Although he did not believe the words of that old man, but not long after his father was announced to have misdiagnosed the disease, causing someone to lose their life. The clinic of the family was also discovered to be selling fake medicine, then was forced to close, and his father was imprisoned from then on. Vong Tung Nguyen continues to reveal that in that year he once doubted and asked that person directly if the matter of the Deep family was caused by him pulling the strings from behind. That old man did not admit and did not deny, but only spoke vaguely that everything was destined by heaven. The time after that he cured the illness of Demuk Kai, but gave all the credit to that old man to take the opportunity to approach the De family more deeply. After the two families Tu and Vong became close, then he gradually took over the entire market of the opponent. Coming to this, Vong Tung Nguyen affirms that the death of the parents of Deep then definitely relates to that old man, because if not he would not have worked hard to take away their ashes. On the hand of Deep then is the paper recording the address that the person requested to send the ashes to. He immediately recognizes this familiar handwriting is his, then starts to query where he is currently located. Vong Tung Nguyen helps his son stand up, then replies that the ashes were taken by the people of the old man, so the two father and son truly do not know where he is hiding. He does not say anything more, but only calls the name of Hak Long to hand over all the handling of this place to him. The eyes of Hak Long exude a cruel look, then happily receives the order that just handing everything to subordinates is done. Looking at Hak Long holding a short knife and going toward him, Vong Tung Nguyen scolds Deep then as a bastard for promising to spare the lives of his father and son. He replies logically that he accepts to spare their lives does not mean his subordinates must also do the same. He coldly turns his back and walks away, leaving behind a shrill scream echoing from behind. He walks slowly and wonders in his head whether the tragic case of the Deep family 5 years ago really relates to that old man or not. He asks himself how much of the truth he knows and who is the real culprit behind everything. Being busy thinking, then the girl going with him runs to announce the bad news that Demuk Kai suddenly got sick and Tavan took him to the hospital. He immediately orders to drive straight to the hospital to check. At the hospital room of old Tavan is worriedly asking Dr. Duong about the situation of her father. The doctor determines that behind his head there is a very dangerous blood clot, then starts to announce the worst situation that can happen. She is panicked and begs the doctor to save her father at all costs. He says the illness of old Ta can only be helped by the hospital director to study, so he will help her connect, but leans close to her body meaningfully that this matter is not done for free. Thinking he only wants money, so she agrees to meet regardless of the price. He nonchalantly grabs her soft hand, then asserts that he does not lack money but only has a bit of lust. The blatant words make her understand his evil intention, so she immediately pulls her hand back, then straightaway gives him a slap full of anger. The face of the old doctor darkens, then he loudly slanders her for assaulting a doctor. He quickly grabs her hand to pull away and threatens to hand her over to the security team, so she sits in prison. Suddenly the male lead pushes the door to rush in, then coldly questions who is bold enough to dare to push his wife into prison. Tavan softly calls the name of Deep, then making him have to let go of her hand. He points to her face to denounce her for hitting people and asserts that this behavior is illegal. The voice of Deep then rings out evenly, not angry but imposing, making the listener feel cold down the spine that his wife does not hit people without reason except for those who deserve to be hit. At this moment old Ta struggles to sit up and points at the doctor to recount his crimes as a beast. Tavan hurriedly runs to support her father. He tries to use his last breath to recount the matter that this doctor used his life to threaten his precious daughter. He reveals his evil intention with her body, which is truly a damned bastard. His eyes radiate killing intent, no different from the death god coming to claim a life for daring to have intentions with his woman. Looking at him step by step approaching him, he is panicked and stammers to ask what he wants to do. He kicks straight into his face, then coldly declares that he will not be able to die peacefully. Deep Fong kicked Dr. Duong and sent him flying straight out of the room. He sat on the floor and acted as a victim, screaming that someone was committing murder in broad daylight. He coldly walked towards him and made him start stammering while boasting about his background. He claimed to be the son of the second most powerful official in the Administrative Institute of Gyeongdu City. He threatened that he would pay a heavy price if he dared to touch a single hair on his head. Deep Fong snorted coldly and challenged him to see who would be the one to die first. He stomped hard on the sensitive spot of the man and caused his shrill scream to echo throughout the hospital. The curious crowd surrounded the hallway. They looked at the man lying on the ground in horror and wondered if he could still survive. Many people urged others to quickly take him to the emergency room and then report to the hospital leadership. They also needed to inform the security team to block the scene immediately. The girl beside him calmly spoke up and asked if she needed to take action to handle everything for him. Inside the hospital room suddenly came the heartbreaking cry of Devan. Her father had an accident and fell into a coma, which made her cry in helplessness. She begged her father not to leave her. The male protagonist immediately rushed to check the pulse for Old Man 2. He requested Tiu Din to go and close the door so that he could perform the ancestral technique to save people. Tiu Din quickly followed the request. She accidentally heard a young man reporting the incident to the hospital director. He asserted that this was not a normal medical dispute but an act of intentional murder. He argued that if they did not deal with it strictly, then no doctor would dare to work here anymore. Director Lu Vin Wan was peeking into the room to check the situation. The scene inside made him stunned with surprise. Looking at how he performed acupuncture, he immediately recognized the lost techniques such as Thu Duong Hua, Quan M2 and Kai Zhao Man. Old Man 2 was grimacing in pain, which was a sign that he was performing the step of resurrection and regrowth. The director affirmed that this was the tie-at divine needle which had been missing for a long time. The young man beside him saw that he was standing still, so he impatiently urged him to break the door and arrest the person. The director waved him off. He ordered everyone to be silent to keep order and step back. The young man left in anger. He mocked that the director was so old that he was confused. He decided to report the news to the father of Duong Quan so that he could come and solve it. He secretly called to report to Leader Duong that his son was seriously injured by someone. The person on the other end of the line screamed in anger and scolded Lu Vin Wan for being useless. He immediately drove to the hospital. In the hospital room, Deep Fong was still highly focused on treating Old Man 2. Tiu Din stood thoughtfully beside him and continuously wiped the sweat on his forehead with a very gentle expression. Tuvan observed that scene with murderous eyes. She wondered who this strange girl was and why she contained such deep sorrow. The jealousy of the girl was so obvious that he could not help but notice. He secretly thought that it seemed Tuvan had really taken an interest in him, so she had such a jealous reaction. Deep Fong collected the needles into the bag and announced that the body of Old Man 2 was stable. He only needed to rest a little bit and would wake up. He ordered Tiu Din to go and open the door. As soon as he finished speaking, the door opened. The director rushed in and knelt down in front of him. He did not care about his age but begged him to accept him as a disciple. Lu Vin Wan earnestly called him a divine doctor. The young man who reported and the nurses behind were confused and did not understand what was happening. They could not believe that the director, who was usually proud of his medical skills, would bow before a young man like that. He told himself that the old man must have been crazy. Deep Fong coldly commented that the quality of the director was too poor. He was not qualified to become his disciple at all. Lu Vin Wan hugged his leg tightly and cried while begging. He was ready to trade his life just to be accepted as a student. Witnessing this scene, the doctors and nurses outside were frozen in place because they could not believe their eyes. The young man who reported was very confused. He could not figure out why a national medical master could discard his dignity and show such a mean appearance. Deep Fong suddenly asked whether it was Western medicine or traditional medicine. The ultimate goal of the medical profession was still to treat and save people. The director was still kneeling and sincerely answered that it was correct. He calmly explained for him to understand. His starting point was Western medicine. If he was in a hurry to follow him as a disciple now, it was no different from abandoning his own strengths to pursue a profession he had never understood. Was that not an act that was too foolish? Hearing this, he woke up and stood up. He had helped him realize that he had been too stubborn. Because whether it was Eastern medicine or Western medicine, it was all just to practice medicine to save the world. Deep Fong helped him stand up and promised that in the future both of them would have many opportunities to exchange medical skills. Lu Vin Wan was moved to tears. His mouth did not stop thanking the divine doctor. In the corner of the room, Duong Quan was still unconscious and had not been taken for treatment. Seeing his precious son in this state, the father was extremely pained. The mother wailed miserably and interrogated who had dared to cause this terrible incident. Old man Duang followed his wife and swore. He declared that whoever harmed his son, he would definitely peel their skin and remove their bones, even throw them into the sea for fish to eat to take revenge. The impulsive young man from earlier quickly pointed his finger at Deep Fong and accused him of being the culprit. Earlier, he had intended to incite people to rush in and control him but was prevented by the director. Old man Duang loudly questioned Lu Vien Wan if he had sat in the director chair for too long and was tired of living. Although he was a bit hesitant, he still firmly spoke words of justice. He believed that the matter of the young master being beaten definitely had a hidden cause. Who was right and who was wrong could not be judged just by looking at the surface. The lioness of the Duang family did not care about reason. She aggressively bared her fangs and claws, screaming for him to pay with his life for her son. She had not even touched Deep Fong when she was kicked by Tiu Din and flew 800 meters away. Sitting on the ground, she still did not forget to curse her as a villain who dared to take action against her. Old man Duang also arrogantly challenged. He was confident that he was the deputy director of the city, so today he would definitely make him pay the price. Immediately the security team rushed into the room, causing the people around to be terrified. Old man Duang ordered his subordinates to arrest all of them immediately. Deep Fong coldly warned that whoever dared to take another step should not blame him. Tiu Din also mocked. She did not expect that a petty deputy director in this city would dare to act arrogant. She wondered if the Tan family in Gyeongbak was easily bowing to the 6 provinces of Gyeongnam. Hearing that, old man Duang was a bit heavy. He wondered if this woman was a person of the Tan family, one of the famous vassals in Gyeongbak. The wife did not understand the situation, so she blamed her husband. She wasted his effort being a high-ranking official in the court while letting his wife and children be bullied. Kwan's son had been crippled, so the Duang family was considered to have no successors. Provoked by his wife, he ordered the security team to draw their guns to handle the situation. Tu Van instinctively stood in front of him out of worry. In her heart she only thought that at all costs she could not let him be in danger. But Deep Fong held her hand and pulled her aside. He told her to rest assured because having him here nothing would happen. Tiu Din reminded him that he was crazy. If he was still stubborn holding a gun, then the Tan family in Gyeongbak would not forgive him. Duang Min Mak at this time had lost his mind. His son was crippled, then his life had no meaning anymore. His wife's words were not wrong. Even if the person of the Tan family in Gyeongbak was present here, it could not stop him. He was determined to kill the target today. He ordered the security team to act immediately. Just at that moment, the Longdan Temple army commanded by Hak Long appeared. They quickly surrounded all the people present in the room and shouted loudly that who dared to touch their Long master. Looking back, old man Duang at that time was slightly scared. Was this not the god of slaughter at the airport? Why were they suddenly gathered in such large numbers in this place? Remembering that this person had just arrived and called him Long Master, he still heard Tavan wondering if he was really the Long Master. He just casually told her that she had misheard. Deep Fong glanced at Hak Long with an unhappy look. He secretly blamed him for being too rash in his heart. Hak Long showed obvious fear and bowed his head to apologize to the Long Master. Duang Min Mak at this time had realized the man in front of him was the Long Master that all the powerful family heads in the capital dared not offend. Sweat poured out like rain. He hurriedly ordered his subordinates to lower their guns immediately. The fat wife on the ground still had not realized the severity, so she scolded her husband for being crazy for daring to order to drop the weapons. She thought that this group of people was not a good kind, so this was an opportunity to capture everyone. Old man Duang slapped his wife to warn her. He shouted for her to keep her mouth shut if she did not want to cause the Duang family to collapse. He turned towards Deep Fong, bowed respectfully to admit his mistake, and believed that his son being beaten was well deserved. He hoped that he would be generous enough to overlook the impulsive behavior from earlier. He coldly asked back that if an apology could solve everything, then what was the need for the law? Duang Min Mak quickly knelt at his feet. He begged him to spare his family a way to live. Everything was because he had eyes but did not see the expert. Deep Fong looked at Tiu Din and ordered to hand over everything here for her to handle. She naturally did not refuse. She stepped in front of old man Duong and mocked that she would investigate how he had been acting recklessly in this city over the past few years. The soft sentence was enough to make him understand that his life had completely ended. At this moment, the director asked him how he wanted to deal with that snitch. He casually replied that he would not interfere in the internal affairs of the hospital. Relieved, Lu Vien Wan immediately ordered the suspension of Li Vin Hua. He told him to just wait and receive the investigation from the hospital. After that group of people was escorted out, Deep Fong asked old man Lu to arrange for his father-in-law to stay for observation tonight. He believed that tomorrow he would wake up. Mr. Lu moodily replied that he was too polite. He would definitely arrange the best nurse for old man too. He turned to Devan and suggested taking her home to rest. After a hard day she needed to sleep well. Let the director take care of the matter here. Devan did not refuse his good intentions. Just then, she received a call from her younger sister Wei Nhi. She announced that the father and son of the Vong family had been killed. Tuvan really did not understand what was happening because everything was too sudden. Lu Wei Nhi shouted on the phone that she should not dream that she could become the young lady of the Vong family anymore. Wake up. Tuvan secretly thought that this girl spoke too hard to listen to. On the phone, she still continued to mock her that she thought she could turn into a phoenix but she was still just a sparrow. Tuvan did not pay attention to those bitter words anymore. She wondered if the fact that Deep Fong had just returned and the Vong family had fallen was a too strange coincidence. In front of the main gate of the De family, she was informed that Wei Nhi would come to introduce her new boyfriend. She clearly understood that this younger sister had no good intentions. She just wanted to come to watch a joke and show off her lover. As soon as the gate opened, she saw Deep Fong standing there with a bag in his hand. She wondered why he came so early. Raising the bag in his hand, he replied that he came to bring breakfast for her. At the same time, a luxury car stopped in front of the gate. Wei Nhi stepped down and looked at her sister with hateful eyes. Seeing the godlike man standing next to Devan made her even more uncomfortable because she did not understand why handsome and good men were all surrounding this woman. As soon as she approached, she mocked that Vong Sam had just died and she already had a new joy. She was truly a person with unpredictable desires. Before she could respond, the young man beside her spoke viciously that was her mouth connected directly to her anus, so whenever she opened her mouth it smelled so bad. Tuvan could not help but laugh. She covered her mouth with her hand because she did not expect Deep Fong to have such a sharp tongue. Wei Nhi looked at her sister and questioned that this man of hers was really nothing. Even a joke he did not know how to say. He did not care at all. His eyes scanned her modern cheongsam and commented that this dress was very short, as if she wanted to seduce all the men on the street. She was truly a villain. Wei Nhi aggressively questioned what he just said. He pushed her aside and said he was just joking a little. Could she not even distinguish between a joke and reality? She was so angry that she was speechless. Tuvan did not expect that Deep Fong could suppress the insolent mouth of this younger sister, making her completely unable to resist. Lu Wei Nhi turned towards the car and called her lover to come down and greet her good friend. As soon as he stepped out of the car, he looked at Tuvan with surprised eyes. In his heart he constantly marveled at her beauty. She was truly a woman so beautiful that Wei Nhi could not compare at all. Seeing him standing still, she could not help but pinch his hand and question. She urged Tran Vu Kiem to quickly introduce himself to her friend. She leaned close to him and began to boast that her friend was named Devan, who was originally engaged to young Master Vong, but unfortunately he had a bad life and just died. This friend of hers also quickly found a new person. Did he see that she was formidable? Tuvan's eyes were sad. She clearly understood that she was mocking her as a type of person who changed lovers like changing clothes. With his hands crossed in front of his chest, the male protagonist asked him that this car looked familiar. He asked if he was sure this was his car. Tran Vu Kiem stammered and replied that he was sure. He asked what he meant by saying that. Lu Wei Nhi spoke up to defend her boyfriend. She blamed him if he felt that what he could not buy then others could not buy it either. She also pointed the spearhead towards Devan. blaming her sister for finding what kind of boyfriend who had no ability but liked to be jealous of the rich. Tu Van spoke up and affirmed that she believed in Deep Fong. He did not hate the rich nor speak nonsense. She believed that this car was not the boyfriend car of hers. He heard that and was very happy. Tu Van had not changed. She still always protected him like the years before. She said she would go to denounce her sister to others so that everyone knew how despicable she was. Immediately he took action and made her fall face down. The action was so fast that even Tu Van had to be surprised. The eyes of Deep Fong at this time were frighteningly gloomy. He coldly said that if she did not know how to manage her mouth then he would tear it apart for her. Holding her swollen cheek, she wondered why the eyes of this man were so scary. Tan Din drove to the place just in time. She asked him that the car had been brought here. Did he and his sister-in-law want to go for a walk now? She realized her car was also here. Deep Fong walked over and asked if she had driven this car to the airport to pick him up yesterday. Tan Din confirmed firmly that it was true. But even she was confused why her car appeared here because yesterday she had sent people to take it for maintenance. He pointed his finger at the Tran man and reported back that he said this car was his. Tan Din angrily took her phone to call the store to see how they explained it. That man hurriedly knelt on the ground and begged her not to call. He admitted that he was a mechanic inside the store, so he had used the pretext of testing the engine to drive the car out to show off. He begged her not to call, otherwise he would lose his job. Lu Wei Nhi rushed forward and asked if he was not the vice president of the Wavu Group. He scolded her for saying what kind of fart. He was just a lowly mechanic. Too embarrassed and angry, she rushed up to scratch his face and shouted that she would risk her life with him. He accused her of being greedy for money. Just seeing him driving a luxury car, she hated not being able to stick to him. Because she was greedy for money now, she still wanted to blame him for what? Tu Van opened her eyes in surprise. She wondered if this was immediate retribution for those who liked to humiliate others. The two people kept arguing loudly, making Deep Fong feel very uncomfortable. He ordered Tu Din to call security to throw them both away immediately. She replied quickly and carried out his request. After the money-grubbing couple was dragged away, she turned to report to him that she had found information about the person he was looking for. He asked sternly where the specific location was. Tu Din replied that according to initial preliminary information, that person might be hiding on Lin Kok Mountain. His eyes became sharp. He was not angry but solemnly said that he did not need preliminary judgments but needed accurate information. She panicked and asked for 1 more hour to give an answer that satisfied him. He did not have enough patience, so he gave her exactly 20 minutes. Tu Din rushed to do her duty without daring to bargain for another sentence. She herself could not believe that Deep Fong, a person who married into the Tu family and was weak and lived quietly 5 years ago, had now become such an imposing king. A while later, Tan Din finished the phone call and reported that the information had been confirmed. Hak Long was leading people to surround the Taoist temple where the old man was hiding. He replied briefly that he knew. Tu Van saw that he intended to leave, so she could not help but ask who the person he wanted to find was. He did not want to explain much, so he just said vaguely that it was an acquaintance and then said he had to go first. He told Tan Din to take her sister-in-law to the hospital to visit old man too. The girl immediately replied yes. Seeing him leave, she turned to ask Tan Din about the terrible things that Deep Fong had experienced over the past 5 years. Tan Din replied that she could only say that he left without saying goodbye just because he wanted the best for her. Tu Van asked back confusedly that was it because of her. Tan Din said that in that year the Tu family had cancer. There was a strange old man who came to find him and offered a deal in exchange for a way to treat him. Right at that moment, a car crash happened right before their eyes, causing the black car to billow smoke. The two ladies were shocked and did not understand what was happening. An old man stepped out from the white car, causing Tan Din to be surprised and stammer, not believing her eyes. Tu Van was completely confused by her attitude. That old man suddenly rushed over and intended to capture both of them at the same time. Meanwhile, at the Taoist temple on Lin Kok Mountain, Deep Fong stood before the door and asked his subordinate if he was still here. The subordinate replied that he was still inside and had not left at all. He instructed everyone to wait outside. He would enter inside alone first. Hak Long wanted to stop him. But he was determined that even if the opponent wanted to take his life, they could not stop him. He walked inside by himself. Hak Long instructed his subordinates that even if they had to lose their lives, they must protect the safety of the Long Master at all costs. Deep Fong stepped inside and loudly asked that he had been missing for such a long time. Was his health still good? Looking at the back, he determined that it was definitely him. But as he took a few more steps, he was shocked to realize that the identity of the old man was not right. So he hurriedly shouted the word master twice. He ran closer and saw his master suffering from serious injuries. He panicked and said that he would definitely save him with the tie-at divine needle technique that could resurrect the dead and reconnect bones. When his needle was about to fall, the old man stopped him. He scolded him for being a fool because his heart pulse had been severed. Even he could not save himself. So what could he do? He was angry and supported him. Then swore that he would lead the army to kill the person who caused this state. The old man coughed violently and said that he was not the opponent of that person. The reason he tried to endure until this moment was to let him know important truths. He analyzed that medicine from the past to the present was divided into two sects: Godly Doctor and Devil Doctor. The Godly Doctor sect was always the righteous path favored by imperial dynasties. Conversely, the Devil Doctor sect was always oppressed and purged. 5 years ago, the Deep family was exterminated precisely because they were the lineage of the Devil Doctor sect. He felt confused if his family originated from the Devil Doctor sect. Then was the perpetrator the Godly Doctor sect? The old man affirmed that it was exactly like that. The Deep family had been very discreet, but because his father saved people and revealed his ultimate technique, he was discovered. That year, he had accepted the entrustment of his father to take him away from there to preserve his life. He wondered why he helped the Vong family and brought the ashes of his parents. The old man coughed violently and affirmed that he had never contacted anyone from the Vong family. For the past 5 years he was only busy fighting against the Godly Doctor sect to protect him. So he basically did not know how the situation outside was. This time he came here because he received news that the Godly Doctor sect wanted to kill him. Speaking to this point, he coughed violently again and could not speak anymore. He shouted that he could not let anything happen and absolutely must not die. The old man tried hard to speak his final words when realizing that his end had come because he knew that any struggle would be useless. He took the blood-colored Buddhist beads from his body, which was the heirloom of the Ghost sect, and passed them back to him. The war between the Divine Medical sect and the Ghost Medical sect started, and he would be the final successor of the sect, carrying a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. Before closing his eyes, he said the greatest regret of his life was that he could not protect him for this entire life. His heart was aching so much that he could not speak a word. Then he compressed his inner feelings into a scream. Hearing his call, the black dragon ran directly inside. He saw him kneeling and bowing before the body of his master. He spoke up and asked, "What should the subordinate do, my dragon lord?" He was no longer in the mood to answer him. Then he bowed his head close to the ground and said a few seemingly meaningless sentences that the person had been tired all his life, and as a traveler of the world he stopped his steps because of him. He stood up, put the Buddhist beads on his hand, and determined that this place was also considered a rare, beautiful scene very suitable for burying his master, letting the green mountains and clear water accompany him. The black dragon and the subordinates knelt and replied yes. He had another call coming in, and as soon as he pressed the answer button, the other side gave him 20 more minutes. After this period of time he would set fire to the family, and by then he would not guarantee how his 2 women would be. He was resentful in his heart because this person was definitely the one who killed his master and pushed the Deep family to the point of extinction, and still wanted to harm Van and Yu Din. He reached out his hand and asked him to give the military saber to him. Offering the military saber with both hands, he replied, "Here it is, my dragon lord." He quickly grabbed the saber and rushed away like a wind because he determined that this bastard had a cruel heart. He thought that 20 minutes was absolutely impossible to wait until the 21st minute, so he definitely had to be a little fast. He could not let the 2 of them have trouble. Those who saw him go like that only knew how to stand below and call after him, "Dragon Lord." At the family villa, a guy with a ponytail held a ready blazing torch and praised the male lead for being on time. Too lazy to talk much to this brat, he punched him straight and made him fall face down. With a gloomy face he stepped on him with one foot and demanded him to call his master out because his strength was so weak he did not want to waste time with him. That guy said his master had slipped away first and asked him to wait here to give this item to him. When asked by him where his master hid and what the item was that he wanted to give, he glanced toward the car and said the item was in the trunk, and where his master went he did not know. He went to open the trunk and really found a box inside. The guy was now trembling with fear and asked the item had been handed over to him, could he leave yet. Without anger but with authority he asked back, do you think I can let you go? Then he cried and begged that he was only a shipper and he had already beaten him, so please give him a way to live. Now he asked the question, where are my two girls? He pointed into the house and confirmed that both beauties were in the house and no one was hurt at all. Actually, the two girls were only knocked unconscious and thrown on the sofa from the outside. He had felt that their aura was stable and they were not hurt at all. Then he asked a stupid question, elder brother, do you need me to pack those two little girls for you? He pointed his hand and told him to get lost quickly. He did not let him go so easily but called the black dragon and asked him to cast a net to track that car. At this time, left alone, he quickly opened the lid of the box and surprisingly inside were the toys that his parents gave him when he was young. These things had been lost when the Deep family was destroyed at the same time 5 years ago. In that box there were also two jars that looked like his parents' ash jars, but when opened they were empty inside. He began to generate the speculation that these two jars were empty not because people poured the ashes away and washed them clean, but like they had never contained anything before. This could prove that his parents might still be alive in the world. Surprisingly, from inside the room, Tiu Den had woken up. She saw his figure from afar, then softly called Deep Van. She ran quickly towards him and announced that the person who attacked them looked exactly like the portrait of his father on the grave. He was extremely confused because if that mysterious person was his father, then what was the motive that made him attack his master? He did not understand why over the past years he had impersonated the master to support and then harm the De family, so what was his real purpose after all? Tiu Din at this time also asked the question whether the master and the mistress were both still alive. He replied that at that time he was too heartbroken, so he basically could not do anything. He only saw his parents' friends bury their ashes in the grave. She suggested that why did not we investigate from the people who helped with the funeral that year, maybe from them we could find out the truth of everything. He assigned this matter to her immediately and she also replied, it is clear. Now in the room, Tavan had also woken up. She opened her eyes to see him holding her in his arms, then a bit agitated she called Deep Fong and said he had returned just now. A person had attacked her. He suddenly put her on the ground to let her stand by herself. He concernedly asked that, are you okay? The other person had gone and he wanted to know what that person looked like. She said it was lucky that she had not seen that person face clearly. Now she remembered Tiu Din and asked about her condition. He replied Tiu Din was fine and let her go back to rest. Now he would go with her to the hospital to visit father too, and she of course agreed. After taking a few steps she suddenly called his name and expressed that she missed her mother a little. She recounted the story of her mother because of anger at the engagement between her and the Vong family, so she returned to Gyeongbak, which was her maternal hometown. He held her hand and comforted that now he had returned. Tomorrow we would go to Gyeongbak together to welcome her mother back to reunite. Tuvan happily agreed because besides her mother she also missed her maternal grandparents very much, so she wanted to take this opportunity to return to visit them for a few days. At the hospital, Tuvan was in the hospital room with her father. The male lead along with Tiu Din stood outside the room. She reported that the people who helped with the funeral for his parents that year mostly died mysteriously. Only one person was still in Gyeongbak, but the identity still needed to be confirmed again. He coldly gave her a 3-day deadline to clarify that person identity. Tiu Din bowed her head to receive the order, even though she also had a speculation that the master and the mistress were actually still alive. He determined that if the truth 5 years ago the divine medical sect intended to use his parents' death to write an article, they might have set up this play from that time. She acknowledged that what he said was not wrong because if his parents were still alive there was no need to kill to silence them. He speculated that using medical skills to change a person's appearance was not difficult. He could disguise himself as an old man to deceive the Vong family, so he could also impersonate his father to lure him into the trap. Speaking of this, he confirmed that the only survivor in Gyeongbak was very important and we must take a trip there. At this time the hospital room door opened and Devan asked what was the matter that President Liu called him. He replied that he was going to a distant consultation and met a patient with a complicated situation, so he wanted him to try to see. She wondered that even President Liu could not handle it, so the illness must be very serious. She advised him to go there quickly because this matter was related to a human life. He reluctantly held her hand and said he would ask Tiu Din to take her to Jiang back to save the person. After finishing the work he would personally come to pick her up. She happily accepted the invitation, and before leaving he patted Tiu Din's shoulder and instructed her to take good care of the sister-in-law. The scene shifted to the main gate of Jiang and City People Hospital. The male lead just got off the car and there was a team of doctors and nurses waiting there. President Liu came out first to take the initiative to shake his hand, then said some polite words that Divine Dr. Deep had traveled all day and was tired. It was very hard for you. He politely replied that he did not need to be polite and wanted to know where the patient was currently so he could quickly go there. Following the presidents was a person who did not understand reason. He muttered that he thought the person who came was some big shot. It turned out to be just a nobody. The emergency room had a fat girl lying on the hospital bed in a state of coma. The condition was determined as myocardial infarction accompanied by a series of other complications. All internal organs were exhausted for unknown reasons. Deep Fong heard this and promised to check his condition first and try his best to help him pass the death gate. That guy was not quiet again and let out a puff sound, then repeated the focus of his words. He sarcastically said that trying was it not that if you cannot save him you cannot blame the male lead. He criticized that such a thing also dared to call himself a divine doctor. These words fell into the ears of Lu Vien Wan. He turned back to question President Kwong that because of respecting him he invited the divine Dr. Deep, he should give that person a clear attitude. At this time President Kwong flatteringly said to the divine doctor that he hoped he would not mind. This Din Hua was a straightforward person who thought whatever he said, so his personality was a bit rough. He replied that he would not mind, then added that he was not his father. Whether he was educated or not had nothing to do with him. While talking he had reached out his hand to check the pulse of the patient on the bed. Din Hua angrily pointed at him and asked who he said was uneducated, then wanted him to make it clear. He coldly requested that if he wanted to know he should call him father. Of course this guy did not agree to follow, so he asked back on what basis he had to call him father. Deep then began to mock. That was it not that he wanted him to explain clearly. If the fact that he was uneducated was not related to him being his child, then why did he care so much to make himself tired? That young man was so bitter that he cursed, but before he could finish the sentence President Kwong spoke in a serious tone to stop him and told him to shut up if he did not want to get out. At this time the male lead took a set of acupuncture needles from his pocket, which made the old man standing next to him admire that these silver needles were truly beautiful. Din Hua laughed coldly and thought that in this day and age there were still people who believed in traditional medicine, so he determined that the male lead was just a swindler. He also boldly declared that if he could cure this patient he would be willing to swallow all those silver needles. Deep then began to treat with his hands as if hiding and appearing a magical light, and reminded him to remember clearly what he had just said. With some miraculous method that outsiders could not see in time how he used the needles, soon the fat girl on the bed had a reaction with her eyes wide open. The doctors who followed were all surprised and admitted that this guy was truly a divine doctor. Just relying on a few needles he could wake up a patient who was in critical condition. Seeing the patient awake but not following medical principles because common heart support drugs only had surface effects, Mr. Kwong suddenly saw him start to use vital energy to move the needles. The male lead hands moved quickly on the patient body, making senior doctors have to admit that with this top-notch medical skill that young man could definitely join the ranks of national medical masters. No wonder when telling about him Lu Vien Wan was so excited. At this time the girl on the bed opened her mouth to ask what happened to me. Without answering her question he asked back whether she often used weight loss pills. She replied yes, but was full of questions, not understanding why he knew. He advised her not to use that weight loss medicine anymore because it almost took her life. She did not accept this fact and asked back how this could happen. Too lazy to talk more with her, he replied quickly that he had prescribed her a prescription. Just drink 1 dose every morning for 5 days and she would recover. President Kwong at this time secretly thought that even though he had used all the modern machines in the hospital, he did not diagnose that the patient condition was due to weight loss pills. Yet he only used a few silver needles to know the root of the disease. In front of his eyes now the girl was happily thanking him continuously. Out of the hospital room he chased after old Din and asked if he still remembered what he said earlier. Planning to escape but failing, he still wanted to argue stubbornly, but the old president called his full name and asked him to apologize to Divine Dr. Deep immediately. He hummed coldly and decided not to follow. He was also too lazy to care, so he waved his hand and said let it go. There was no need to apologize because if he apologized he would not accept it either. Being bitten by a dog, then it was not necessary to bite back. He was so angry that he could not speak. At this time no one cared about him anymore. Deep then shook hands with old Lu and said that the patient condition had been controlled, so he still had work to do first. Standing in a dark corner he angrily punched the wall and determined that if he was a person of Jiang and then he would definitely not give him a place here. This resentment he swore he would never swallow. Suddenly his phone rang. Just picking up the receiver, the other side asked if he wanted to see Deep Fong destroyed. That person confirmed that he could help him. At Tin Quang Hotel the male lead was sitting majestically on the chair in the presidential room and opposite him was Black Dragon. He reported that the person who brought the trunk last time had always been closely monitored but no one behind him was detected. Deep Fong determined that indeed this opponent was very careful. He gave him a folder and said this was the information about the person in Jiangback that he ordered to investigate before. Flipping through a few pages to see, he was a bit unexpected that this person now had such an identity. He suggested why we do not directly kidnap him here. He felt that doing so was not okay. The villain behind who killed his father was definitely staring at his every move at all times. If he arbitrarily dealt with the opponent he would definitely be ambushed first. At this time he suddenly thought about the fact that if the only person who knew the truth about his parents' death 5 years ago died, then this would forever be an unsolved case that could not be answered. He thought of a way and leaned into Black Dragon ear to whisper that let us do this. After a while of hearing him discuss, he did not believe and asked back if the Dragon Lord really wanted to be so flashy. He determined that the more bustling the better. The more people the more fun. Until then no matter who he came into contact with he would not cause attention and would not lead to suspicion of the person standing behind. Giving him a like, he praised that he really had a trick. Not worthy of being the first divine strategist of the ages. He hummed coldly and asked him not to flatter. He continued that regarding the Tan family in Jiangback, it was also a large famous family. This matter just assign it to Tiu Din for the Tan family to create momentum. This matter just decide so. He flattered that the Dragon Lord is wise. The subordinate will go to do it immediately. The next day at the main gate of Tin Quang Hotel the male lead just stepped out of the lobby and was surrounded by a group of people pointing guns at him. The leader asked for his identity and introduced that they were the order team. Arresting him according to the regulations of the law and asked him to raise his hands otherwise he would be shot. Deep Fong questioned which order team they belonged to. The leader took out his work card, introduced himself as belonging to the order team of Jiangnan City and said that if he had any problems he could ask right now. He was very calm and asked what crime he had committed. That person loudly questioned that yesterday he treated a patient in this Jiangnan City, right? With both hands in his pocket he replied that is right, so what? That person concluded that the patient passed away at 4 o'clock this morning. They had enough basis to suspect that he was involved in her death. When saying these words that person had prepared handcuffs behind his back to prepare for action. The more they talked the more his team approached the male lead and accused him of being involved in illegal medical practice. So they had enough basis to arrest him according to the regulations of the law and asked him to cooperate to the headquarters of Jiangnan City to take testimony. He was a bit surprised because he did not expect that person to have died. This was impossible unless someone wanted to frame him then deliberately harmed that patient. He intended to take his phone to call but was stopped by the captain. He asked him to put the phone down and throw it on the ground for him. Without anger but with authority he asked back that was he teaching him how to work. Stepping back a few steps his face turned pale because he did not expect him to have such terrifying power. At this time the male lead calmly connected the phone and was informed by Lu Vien Wan that the patient from yesterday suddenly died this morning. He replied that he knew about this. Jiangnan City just sent an order team here and they were next to him. Hearing this news, the old man was shocked and felt that it was really nonsense. That patient died, then what did it have to do with him? He said he would immediately call Kwang Lai Vong because yesterday there were many people at the scene who witnessed the miracle of the fat girl waking up. But he thought that this was someone who stole and cried for help. This matter he would handle by himself, no need for him to worry. At this time he looked at the captain and suggested going to the headquarters together. But before leaving he reminded him of a meaningful sentence that inviting a god is easy but sending the god away is difficult. At the office of the health department director, President Kwang was being questioned by a major shareholder that the family caused such a big problem, but the camera was reported to be broken. Can it be such a coincidence? With sweat all over his face, Kwang Lai Vong could not wipe it off and explained that he also did not know why this was. But the truth was that yesterday a divine doctor named Deep Fong cured that patient. He fell into deep thought, then repeated the name Deep Fong. Remembering yesterday, Dr. Din said the deputy head of medical department investigated the practice documents of Deep Fong, but he did not have a medical practice certificate. He was so angry that he stood up from his chair and scolded old Kwang for being foolish. To let a person without a practice certificate diagnose and treat at our hospital. To appease the director, he explained that this person was not invited by him but by Lu Vien Wan. Saying this, he brushed off all responsibility. At this time he suddenly remembered that yesterday Deep Fong also prescribed a traditional medicine prescription for the patient. Surely the problem lied in that prescription. Hearing this, the director asked to send the prescription to him. He would send a letter to the Gyeongdu City Health Department to ask for investigation support, and the autopsy report must be presented immediately. He quickly received the order. At the interrogation room of the Gyeongnan City Inspection Bureau, the male lead was tied to a chair when suddenly someone announced that a visitor had arrived. Seeing an old acquaintance, he said a few sarcastic words that his guess was indeed correct. It was him. The other person asked how he knew he would come to visit. At this time he silently untied himself behind his back, but his mouth still replied that if he could not even guess this, then why would he obediently allow himself to be tied up? Suddenly, right before his eyes, the ropes all over his body snapped and broke. Then he scolded him for being so stupid to deliver himself to the door. Seeing his hand about to reach him, he determined that it was over. But before he could escape, he was grabbed by his neck, lifted off the ground, and asked where the person behind him was. He struggled and reported to him that he was only a messenger, so he hoped he could believe him. This time he did not easily let him go like before, but retorted that before he was a shipper and now he was a messenger. Did he think his IQ was 0? He screamed in pain and confirmed that he was truly not lying to him. Throwing him aside, he demanded him to speak quickly about what message he wanted to deliver this time. Sitting on the ground, he coughed for a while before he could say a fluent sentence that his master wanted him to hand over the blood-colored Buddhist beads. If he did so, then the death of this patient would not be related to him. On the contrary, even if his identity was special or his position was high, it would not be easy to get out of this time. He threatened that this was a murder case, wanted him to consider carefully to give him a satisfying answer. He raised his hand high wearing the Buddhist beads. It turned out that everything was because of this item. If he wanted it, then it was not that he could not give it. Just hearing this, that guy reached out his hand and told him to give the Buddhist beads to him. With both hands in his pockets, he told him to go back and deliver the message that if he liked it he should come and get it himself. Only if he was willing to show his face would he definitely give it. That guy stood up and heroically declared that then we had nothing more to say. But he had to think carefully about what his current situation was. His face darkened because he did not expect that just to scheme against him. In the eyes of those people, human life was worthless. He then confirmed that the human heart was even more terrifying than ghosts. The person who killed the patient was not his master. Hearing these words, he could not help but remember the matter related to that patient. The person who conflicted with him was only one person, and the person behind the scenes who wanted to use this matter to take the blood-colored Buddhist beads that his master gave him was definitely not his father. No wonder when he appeared only Tiu Din saw his face, and Devan did not see it, probably because he was afraid of being stripped of the disguise on his face. At the hospital at this time, two elderly men were arguing with each other. The fact that the camera was broken was ignored and they shifted to check the body. Was this not suspecting Mr. Deep? Giving the autopsy report for him to see. Kwong Lai Vong confirmed that the patient passed away due to acute renal failure from drug poisoning. The main cause was due to musk. Mr. Liu did not believe it, so he took the report to examine it himself. Kwong Lai Vong at this time accused that this musk was prescribed by his divine Dr. Deep. Lu Vien Wan scolded him not to slander people. However, old Kwong slammed the table and stood up, thinking that this situation could not avoid his connection. At the same time, he also reported to Mr. Liu that this matter had been reported to the health department and the government side had also issued an announcement. Currently the people were extremely angry at his divine Dr. Deep. Speaking to this point, he happily laughed loudly, opening his own phone to see. Mr. Liu did not expect this matter to spread so strongly on social networks. He did not expect that he himself was the one who harmed the divine Dr. Deep. Below the post at that time were big headlines that practicing medicine without a license treated human lives like blades of grass. He must be executed. At Din Hua office, he was leisurely putting his feet on the table, scrolling through his phone to watch the news with a heart full of joy. Deep then wanted to fight him but was far behind. Just wait there and wait to eat bullets. Suddenly outside there were loud noises. All doctors and nurses ran outside when a security team carrying AK guns rushed into the hospital in a fierce manner. In front of the hospital gate at this time was a convoy of armored vehicles standing majestically, imposingly, with rows of troops lined up in long lines. Din Hua did not understand what was happening, so he asked President Kwong why the Imperial Army surrounded our hospital. He only knew how to show a bewildered face, then replied that he also did not know anything. In the meeting room of the city government, the leader was so angry that his hands clenched into fists, scolding his useless subordinates below that were they eating shit. The positions they were sitting in, if handed to dogs to do, would certainly be completed better than them. A guy was still stupid and did not understand what happened, so he asked General Li what on earth happened. Li Qin Kwong shouted back at him that he still had the face to ask him. Did the media today not report it very bustlingly already? That person at this time realized that the origin of the male lead was not simple at all. Mr. Li replied that not only was it not simple, but thanks to their pig brains, Jiangnan was about to be destroyed. Let alone him. Even those in this room had no qualification to carry his sandals. That person reported that this was all designated and pushed by the director of the city health department. When saying these words, that person constantly wiped the sweat on his face, then continued to tell that the director was always extremely agitated and hot-tempered about this matter. Now it seems a big problem had occurred. Li Qin Kwong at this time questioned where they were detaining him. A representative replied it was at the City Inspection Bureau. He immediately issued an order requiring Din Kai Sin to go to the City Inspection Bureau immediately, and they now also had to go there immediately. In the Inspection Bureau interrogation room, Li Qin Kwong came before the male lead, raised his hand in a military salute, and introduced his name and position as the Supreme Commander of the Southern Region. He yawned deeply and replied that he turned out to be the legendary Commander Li. He smiled fawningly with a flattering expression, denied being worthy of that title, and told him to just call him by his name. Or rather, just call him Little Li. This behavior of his left those who followed him bewildered and understanding nothing. At this moment before the male lead, he still spoke respectfully, saying that Divine Dr. Deep, Little Li has come to take you out. He asked where you wanted to take him. He asked him that wherever he wanted to go, he would take him there. Folding his arms behind his head, he replied that he was lazy to go and just wanted to stay in this place. He even said that he was carrying a serious crime and was waiting for them to announce the sentence. Tears rolled down his face, and he almost knelt down to beg because he affirmed that they would never dare to sentence him. Yet he told them to go ahead and be bold with the sentence. Even if it were a death sentence, he would not complain a word. At this moment, Li Qin Kwong became furious, looked at the crowd on the other side, and asked which one was the Inspector General to get out here for me. A young man wearing glasses raised his hand and replied that it was him. He then loudly questioned who gave him permission to arrest Deep Then and asked if he still wanted to work. He stammered without being able to say a word, and the very next second he fainted and fell to the ground. Li Qin Kwong was even more furious. scolded him for being a weakling who also acted as the city inspection general, and ordered him to get lost and kicked out of the industry tomorrow. With arms crossed in front of his chest and still sitting on the chair, the male lead requested to call the inspector who arrested him this morning here, as he must know the situation clearly. At this moment, another pair of leather shoes appeared in the room, and as soon as he arrived, he was questioned by Li Qin about whether he arrested Brother Fong here. He kept claiming innocence, saying that he only received reports and worked according to the instructions of his superiors. The male lead asked who had come to report the crime. He replied that the reporter was a doctor at the Jiangnan City People Hospital named Din Hua, and he muttered that it was indeed him. Li Qin gave instructions on his behalf, ordering him to bring Din Hua here within 20 minutes. Replying with a yes, he rushed out of the room to execute the order. At the hospital at this time, Din Hua was still holding his phone with an angry face, wondering why the government had not yet come up with a way to handle it. As there was no movement at all, the room door was kicked open from the outside, and the order team, having confirmed that he was Din Hua, immediately put handcuffs on him. He then cried out asking on what basis they arrested him, not forgetting to boast about his background that his uncle was the city health director. He replied, "Do not talk about your uncle. He is just a director. Even if he were the governor of the province today, he would not be able to protect you." Before he could understand what these words meant, he was escorted to the interrogation room. Passing by his uncle, he asked, "Uncle, what is happening? Save me." Slapping him hard, he cursed that if he wanted to die he could die alone. Do not drag him along. This time he also added that because of his stupidity, everyone was about to be finished. Before he understood anything, he was pushed hard into the room. Standing in front of the male lead, he still shouted loudly about on what basis they arrested him and what crime he committed. Di Fong replied that it was because he had not seen the coffin, so he had not shed tears. Throwing something down in front of him, he told him that he thought destroying the surveillance camera was the end of it. So look at this. At this moment, the video showed the scene of Din Hua injecting poison into the patient, causing her to vomit blood on the hospital bed. He turned pale, not understanding what had happened, as it was clear that he had deleted all the recording segments. He then assigned the task to the people here to seriously deal with Din Hua to console the soul of the deceased. Li Qin replied on his behalf that he could rest assured. With his authority, shooting this guy was a simple task. He then knelt on the ground begging him to spare his life because he really did not want to die. Expressionless, he coldly asked, "Did that fat girl want to die?" Relying on his family background, he affirmed that he could compensate the victim family, and he would pay however much they wanted. Kicking him hard, he determined that human life was priceless. If he wanted to compensate, then just use his life to pay for it. Regardless of his pleading, no one cared about him and ordered people to escort him outside to wait for trial. In the room, there were only the male lead and Li Qin, and he told him to give the public a satisfactory answer. He affirmed that he could rest assured, as he would complete the task. At this moment, the male lead had a call from Tavan, and she cried sobbing on the phone, making him very worried and asking what was wrong. The other side cried and said that they were truly too excessive. "I do not want to stay here for another second. Please come and pick me and my mother up to Jiangdu immediately." He reassured her not to be afraid. He would come to pick her up immediately. The scene shifted to Jiang back at the Yang family ancestral mansion. The male lead appeared at the door but was stopped by security who asked if he knew where this was. So he should get lost quickly if he wanted to be smart. He replied clearly that this was the Yang family and also the home of my wife maternal grandfather, Duang Din Huan, so could I not come here? He thought that this identity of his did not mean his wife was the granddaughter of Mr. Duang, and even if so, the wife of a person like him was just trash. So he still advised him to get lost, kicking him flying far away. He determined that this guy was truly looking for death. The commotion at the door drew a crowd of Yang family members, and the leader spoke up asking who he was to dare to hit people here. Did he know where this was? He boldly replied that he came to pick up Tavan, who was his wife along with her mother, and would leave immediately after picking them up. He mistook him for a young master of the Veen family in the capital. But he asked which Veen family. He had mistaken the person. Then he determined that had he heard that Tavan would be engaged tonight, so he came to disturb. He gritted his teeth because he did not expect the Yang family to dare to organize an engagement ceremony for Tavan. With heaven-high anger and mountain-high resentment, he determined that the guts of the Yang family were also too big. Seeing him approach with pressure, he instinctively stepped back a few steps and stopped him. He shouted one word to get lost, which caused him to vomit blood on the spot. At this moment in the main hall of the Yang family, someone was saying that he did not expect Tavan to have such great attraction. Just relying on a photo that could make the young master of the Veen family infatuated. The old man found it regrettable because if it were only the Veen family it was not worth mentioning. On the contrary, if it were the Lam family in the capital, the status would be better. Speaking to this, he suddenly asked where Tavan was. The son rushed to say that he had ordered people to call her but had not seen her yet. And now he would personally go to catch her to bring her here. At this moment, the sound of screaming calling the name Duong then echoed in the hall, demanding to let her go. Tavan was pulled by Duong then, and behind him was a girl asking her brother what he was doing. He hummed coldly with an unhappy expression that she must have kept him waiting too long. Calling him uncle, she seemed to want to cry because she did not expect that he only saw her as a tool to get promoted and get rich. The old man of the Yang surname slapped Tavan hard and scolded her for being insolent. At this moment, someone entered to announce that Deep Fong was storming the gate of the mansion. Hearing the name Deep Fong, she quickly ran out, and her mother called out 2 words Van Nhi. Duong Din Huan determined that he came just in time. Before the young master Veen arrived, he should solve this matter first. Tavan ran to the main gate, calling the name of the male lead loudly and jumping into his arms. Touching the wound on Tavan's face, he asked heartbrokenly who hit her. The old man of the Yang surname proudly received that I hit it, with a provocative appearance, and asked if he wanted to hit him back.